And welcome back. In the previous video, we did the goal setting exercise for the series of tutorials. What we are going to do is now we are going to take it forward. We are going to go back to the table of contents sheet. And let me just tell you what we are going to do now. So we're going to start with the basics of container. Let's understand the concept of containers first before diving into Kubernetes, and then I'm going to build on upon this list. So let's get started. I'm using a new software here with my digipad. So let me see how this comes up. All right. Let's start with talking a little bit about how things used to get done before the containers came into picture. All right. So let me draw some pictures here. So let's call this as machines, the machine during your old times. Let's call this as old IT. Right? Pardon me for my drawing. It isn't that great, and I'm still getting used to this software. Right. So you'll have this machine. You will do your application installation, your code that you have written, your apps. Let's call them as apps. And then your apps will have your dependencies, your Java software or your Spark software or whatever. The runtime of it, let's call it the dependencies, right? Dependencies. And then obviously your machine will have some kind of operating system, right? Your resources, machine having operating system and your RAM and your hard disk and all that. Let's call it, OS over here, right? The application will, interact with OS and do the needful, right? Now let's say after some time you have the need to scale up this system. So what you're going to do is you're going to get one more machine here, right? And put it together along with your existing machine. And obviously, since there are two machines here, you would want to put some kind of what we call as load balancer, right? Some load balancer, and you would connect your load balancer here to this machine and this machine, right? And this would work all nice and fine. But it has some problems, right? What are those problems? This is all physical hardware, right? There are a lot of other issues that we are going to talk about. But let's talk about some of the important and pertinent ones first that are coming into my mind. There's the physical hardware. When you would want to order it, if you're lucky, you might get it in, let's say, a week's time, and then configuring it, installing your software and your code and all that. It is a very time-taking exercise. That's now not how you work anymore. In today's world, you've got something called as containers. All right. So I'll give you some nice analogies also so that you can relate to this. So you've got something called as your code here, your apps and your dependencies, right? And this will be deployed in your physical hardware, right? Your physical hardware. Now, obviously, your hardware or your machine or your big server would have your operating system, right? Like the way you used to do in your, old IT, right? Operating system. But here in between, you will have something called as container engine, all right? Container engine. Right, and your containers are going to interact with this container engine without caring about the underlying operating system, right? It's just like your apps in your app store, right? Which you will deploy on your phones, and this container engine is going to do all the interaction with the operating system in terms of accessing the low level resources. Right, right. An example of these container engines is Docker, the most popular one. But there are other technologies as well. There is CRIO, there is Rocket. Of late, there is a new container technology which has become very popular. It's called as Podman. Right. So we'll talk about all that later on. Now let's say you have deployed your application here, in a container engine, and you need to scale, right? So what are you going to do, right? What you're going to do is you are going to move to something called as cloud. Let's call it, for convenience purpose at this point of time, let's call it as cloud. All right. It could be a cloud provided by the professional, the cloud providers like AWS, your Amazon and all that, or your improvised data center, that kind of cloud. Whatever it is going to be uh, your cloud infrastructure where you can put multiple containers. Here is your container 1, here is your container 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as many of them as you want, right? But you would also want to do some kind of management of this cluster. And let's call this as a cluster that you've set up for your application, because you need to scale up. Your number of users who are accessing this application has increased, right? You can do that manually, but it could be a very tiresome exercise. So what you do nowadays is you do it with the help of a container orchestration software. Well, my dear friends, Kubernetes is one such container orchestration software. In short, it is also called as K8 or K8S. This is what we are going to be learning in this course, right? I'm going to talk about a little bit more on container fundamentals in the next video. So I'm going to see you then. All right.